Smoke covered the battlefield like a heavy blanket. The sky was dark with falling ash, and broken machines lay scattered across the ruins. Ethan, the human soldier, walked slowly through the wreckage. His exoskeleton suit sparked at the joints, each step making a grinding noise. He was tired, wounded, but alive. He told himself he had to keep moving, but then he heard a faint sound. Someone was crying. He stopped, his hand gripping the rifle tightly. For a moment, he thought it was just his mind playing tricks after so many hours in the fight. But then he heard it again, a weak voice, broken and full of pain. He followed the sound, stepping over cracked metal beams and burned stone walls. The voice became clearer, trembling with both fear and anger. He found her under a collapsed wall. A woman, not human, but alien. Her skin was pale silver with a faint glow, her long dark hair tangled with dirt and blood. She wore a torn uniform that had once been royal blue. One of her legs was crushed under heavy steel and she was bleeding badly. Her eyes met his, wide and sharp, filled with something more than just pain. "Leave me," she whispered with all the strength she had left. "If they see you with me, they will kill you." Ethan didn't move at first. His rifle lowered slowly as he studied her. She wasn't just any alien. Her uniform carried the crest of command. She was someone important, someone dangerous for him to be near. His orders were clear: no rescues, no risks. But as he looked at the blood spreading beneath her, the human part of him spoke louder than any order. He bent down, pushing the metal beam away with all the strength of his exoskeleton. The suit groaned, sparks shooting from the arm joint, but the debris moved. She gasped, free at last, but instead of thanking him, she turned her face away. "Fool," she said in a broken voice. "They will never forgive you for this. Not my people, not yours. Leave me." Ethan shook his head once, silent. He slid his arms under her body, lifting her as carefully as he could. She struggled weakly, her fists hitting against his chest plate. "No, put me down," she cried, her voice echoing through the ruins. "I am not worth your life." The exoskeleton shuddered as it carried both their weight. Each step sounded louder in the silence of the dead battlefield. Ethan's breaths came slow and heavy. His visor showed warning lights: low energy, damaged hydraulics, limited power. He knew he couldn't carry her for long, but he still refused to stop. The woman pressed her hand against his chest, her silver eyes flashing with desperation. "You don't understand," she said sharply. "I am not your friend. I am the enemy. My people will kill you, and if your soldiers see you with me, they will call you a traitor. Leave me here to die." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer her. His boots crunched over shattered stone, his armor scraping against ruined walls as he pushed forward. Her voice shook with fury, but underneath it there was fear. "You're going to die because of me," she whispered finally, softer this time, almost like a plea. "Why do this?" He glanced down at her, his face hidden behind the cracked visor. His silence was his answer. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the sound of distant alien patrols. Somewhere out there, her people were searching. If they caught him, they would kill him without question. Ethan knew it. She knew it. Still, he kept walking. Step by heavy step, his arms locked around her fragile body. Her resistance grew weaker. The fight left her, and only the trembling of pain remained. She rested her head against his armored chest, breathing shallowly. He could feel her heart beating fast, her body shaking from both fear and blood loss. The exoskeleton gave a warning beep. Power low. Ethan clenched his teeth and moved faster, pushing the limits of the broken machine. His legs burned inside the suit, but he forced them to keep moving. Every few steps, he looked around the ruined city, searching for cover, for a place to hide before the enemy arrived. The woman raised her head weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Ethan paused for just a second, his breath fogging inside the cracked helmet. He didn't speak, but his eyes behind the visor showed a quiet fire. A fire that said leaving her was not an option. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. He was carrying her not because of duty, not because of politics, but because he could not abandon someone broken and helpless, no matter what race she was. She looked away quickly, tears forming in her eyes. She had begged him to leave her. She had warned him of death. Yet here he was, carrying her through hell while his machine broke with every step. The sound of alien voices echoed in the distance again. Ethan pressed his back against a ruined wall, crouching low, holding her close to silence her breathing. His heart pounded. The patrol was near. One wrong move and they would both be dead. Her nails dug into his chest plate as she whispered in terror, "They're coming. They will find us." Ethan's grip tightened around her, his other hand ready on his weapon. His visor flashed red warnings, his body ached, and the alien princess in his arms begged for him to let go. But he only pulled her closer, his mind set on one impossible choice: carry her or die trying. The patrol voices passed slowly, their shadows stretching across the broken walls. Ethan didn't move, not even a breath, until the sound faded away. Only then did he rise again, lifting her once more, his suit straining under the effort. She looked up at him, her lips trembling, unable to speak. For the first time, her eyes showed something more than anger or fear. They showed confusion. He took another step into the darkness of the ruins, the broken exoskeleton glowing faintly with sparks. Her body cradled against his chest. 3 days still lay ahead, but in that moment, the battle had already begun. The first night passed with silence, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Ethan leaned against the blackened wall of a half-collapsed building, the woman's weight still in his arms. His exoskeleton twitched and whined as if it too begged for rest, but he did not let her slip from his hold. When the pale light of dawn spread across the ruined sky, he forced himself to stand again. She stirred weakly, her silver eyes half open. "Why? Why are you still carrying me?" She whispered, her voice cracked from thirst. He didn't answer. His jaw was locked, his eyes fixed forward. She struggled, pushing against him with trembling hands. "Put me down. You will die. This machine of yours cannot last." The exoskeleton beeped in warning, its screen flashing a low-energy symbol. Ethan felt the weight more with every step, his muscles straining beneath the armor. He adjusted his grip, pulling her closer, refusing to let her fall. Her anger sharpened. She slapped against his chest, weak but filled with frustration. "You're a fool. I am your enemy. You will be hunted because of me." Ethan's boots crunched over broken glass as he entered the shadow of another ruined tower. He lowered his body, careful to avoid being seen from above. The sound of distant aircraft hummed through the air. His visor detected movement. Patrols were close. He pressed his back against the wall, holding her tightly. Her breathing grew fast as alien voices echoed not far away. She clutched at his chest, whispering through clenched teeth, "If they find you, they will kill you in front of me. That is the way of my people." Her tone cracked, not from pride this time, but from fear. He only adjusted his grip and shifted deeper into the ruins, silent as stone. The day dragged on. Heat pressed down, and the dust stung his throat. The woman's head fell against his chest again, her body growing weaker. When he found a rusted water pipe dripping slowly, he sat her down gently for the first time. She groaned in pain as her wounded leg touched the ground. Ethan broke the end of a metal canister and held it beneath the pipe until a few drops gathered. He lifted it to her lips. She resisted at first, shaking her head. "Don't waste it on me." But her dry throat betrayed her, and finally she sipped, eyes closing with relief. When she opened them again, she stared at him as though trying to solve a puzzle. "Why?" she asked again, more softly this time. "Why do you not leave me?" He looked at her, face hidden behind the cracked visor, and then back at the horizon. No words came. He simply lifted her again, ignoring her protest, and walked on. The exoskeleton groaned under the weight of both their bodies. Sparks spat from the right leg joint, each movement slower than before. Ethan's breaths grew louder inside his helmet, and sweat dripped into his eyes. Still he pushed forward, step after heavy step. As night fell, they reached an abandoned transport half buried in rubble. He laid her inside, the first shelter since he had found her. Her body trembled from the cold. He searched through the broken compartments until he found a small power cell. It was almost empty, but enough to heat a coil. He lit a weak fire and sat beside her. Her voice broke the silence. "You know what I am, don't you? You know my crest, my bloodline. If your soldiers learn you carried me, they will call you traitor." Ethan placed a hand against the cracked armor at his side, the sparks still glowing faintly. His silence was heavy, but his eyes flicked toward her face. She searched them, looking for weakness or hesitation, but found none. Her lips trembled as she lowered her gaze. "You will die for me," she whispered, almost to herself. "And I don't even know your name." Outside, The sound of alien patrols drew nearer again, engines humming low in the sky. Ethan lifted his weapon slowly, his other arm wrapped tightly around her as if even in sleep she might slip away. The exoskeleton beeped another warning, but he ignored it. She closed her eyes, her mind filled with confusion, fear, and a strange warmth she did not understand. The second night wrapped them in shadows, and still he carried her burden without a single word. The sun rose weak and red, casting long shadows across the ruins. Ethan's body ached with every step, the exoskeleton dragging like a wounded beast, but he still held her close against his chest. Her head rested on his shoulder, her breath shallow and uneven. By midday, his visor screamed warnings, battery nearly empty. If the power died, he would be carrying her with nothing but his own strength. She stirred, opening her silver eyes. Her voice was softer now, less sharp, more tired. "You can't go on like this. Put me down." He ignored her, adjusting his grip, his face hard and unreadable. She pressed a weak hand against his armor. "Please, you will break your body. Let me die." Ethan stepped into the remains of a marketplace, shattered stalls scattered with burnt wood and melted glass. He searched with sharp eyes until he spotted a broken cistern dripping water into a cracked basin. He set her down carefully, his arms stiff and trembling, and filled a dented cup from the basin. He lifted it to her lips, his hands steady despite his exhaustion. She drank greedily, coughing as the water touched her dry throat. When she looked up at him, there was confusion in her gaze, as if she could not understand why he continued. The fire in the distance reminded them that the world was still hunting. A sudden hum echoed above them. Ethan's visor caught the red lights scanning through the streets. Drones. He snatched her up again and slid into the shadow of a collapsed tower. She pressed against him, heart pounding against his chest, as the search beam passed just inches away. He tightened his arms around her, his finger on the trigger of his rifle, ready to fight even though he knew it was suicide. The beam flickered, then moved on, leaving them in silence once more. When night came, Ethan found shelter beneath the skeleton of a broken bridge. He scavenged pieces of wire and a power shard, sparking a faint flame to life. The glow flickered against her pale skin as she watched him from the ground. She broke the silence with trembling words. "You could have let them find me. It would have been easier." He looked up at her, sweat dripping from his brow, but his expression never softened. She waited for a reply, but none came. The silence between them grew heavy, broken only by the crackle of the tiny fire. Her lips trembled. "Why won't you speak? Why won't you let me die?" Ethan shifted closer, pulling a torn piece of cloth from his pouch. He wrapped it tightly around her wounded leg, his hands steady, his movements careful. She winced in pain, biting her lip, but did not stop him. She watched the concentration in his face, the way his tired eyes still burned with determination. For the first time, she saw something other than stubbornness in him. She saw a strange kind of faith, as if he carried not just her body, but something heavier, something he refused to set down. The exoskeleton beeped weakly again, joints sparking in the darkness. Ethan leaned back against the wall, pulling her closer to shield her from the night wind. She rested her head against his chest, her body trembling. Her eyes stayed open, staring at the faint flame, her mind filled with a question she no longer dared to ask. Above them, the drones returned, their red lights crawling across the ruins. Ethan pulled her against him, covering her with his armor, his breath slow and controlled as the beams searched. Her hands clutched his chest plate tightly, her heartbeat racing. The drones lingered, then drifted away once more. Her tears fell silently as she whispered into the dark, "You are going to die for me, and I don't know why that terrifies me more than the thought of being left behind." Ethan said nothing, only shifted his arms tighter around her, his eyes locked on the dark horizon where danger waited for them both. The second dawn came with bitter cold, the kind that seeped through broken armor and skin alike. Ethan's breath was heavy inside his cracked helmet, his arms aching from holding her through the night. When he rose again, the exoskeleton protested with a long screech of metal, sparks flicking from the joints. He gritted his teeth and forced it forward, her weight balanced against him. She stirred weakly in his arms, eyes opening to see his sweat-soaked face behind the visor glass. Her lips parted, her voice rough. "You're killing yourself." She tried to push away, but her hands had no strength. Stop this madness. You are only a man. You can't carry me forever." He didn't answer, only shifted her higher in his arms and kept walking. The ruins gave way to a stretch of broken ground, where a shallow river of toxic water cut through the earth. The stench made her gag, and even Ethan recoiled at the fumes seeping through the filters. The only way forward was across. He paused, staring at the sluggish green flow, then stepped into it. The water hissed against the exoskeleton, smoke rising where drops touched exposed metal. Alarm screamed through his visor. He held her tighter, raising her above the fumes, while the machine's legs sank deep into the muck. Every step felt like wading through fire. The hydraulics screamed, and sparks burst from the knee joints, but he forced himself forward. She buried her face into his chest, her body trembling as if his will alone was dragging them both across. Halfway through, the right leg of the exoskeleton locked. Ethan's body jolted, the weight of her and the failing suit threatening to pull him under. The water rose up to his waist, the stench burning his throat. With a growl, he twisted free of the locked servo, forcing the machine to move again. The metal screamed but obeyed. He stumbled out onto the far bank, collapsing to his knees, still holding her above the ground. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. She looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Why won't you let me die?" Her voice broke into a sob. "Why?" Ethan's visor was cracked, his face half visible beneath the fractured glass. His eyes were bloodshot, lips pale yet burning with an unshaken resolve. He said nothing, only set her down gently on a patch of dry stone. She watched as he collapsed beside her, trembling from exhaustion, the exoskeleton twitching like a broken animal around him. The day dragged on, his body screaming with pain every time he forced himself up again. She saw it in the way his steps faltered, in the way his jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might break. Yet, not once did he loosen his grip on her. The realization struck her harder than the pain in her leg. He had chosen this, chosen her, without a reason he cared to explain. When night came, the stars glimmered faintly through the ash-filled sky. Ethan built another small fire, its light weak against the vast darkness. He sat with her close, wrapping a torn thermal cloth around her shoulders. She watched him, her chest tightening with something she had never felt before. This man, this human, had broken himself for her again and again, carrying her through fire and poison, refusing every chance to let go. Her hand trembled as it brushed against his chest plate, fingers lingering there. She lowered her gaze, whispering words meant only for the night air. "Maybe. You're stronger than all of us." Ethan did not hear, or if he did, he gave no sign. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, where more danger surely waited, his arms already preparing to lift her again at the first light of dawn. The fire burned low, the orange glow flickering against broken metal walls. Ethan sat with his back straight, one arm resting on the rifle while the other shielded her trembling body from the night wind. His eyes never closed, even as exhaustion weighed on him like iron. When the silence broke, it was not from him, but from the faint hum of engines. She opened her eyes slowly, sensing the change in the air. Her breath caught, and her hand clutched his arm. "They're here," she whispered, her voice shaking. In the distance, blue lights danced across the ruins, patrols, hunting. Ethan rose, the exoskeleton groaning in protest as he lifted her once more. His every step sent sparks down his legs, but he pressed into the shadows, moving between broken pillars and shattered stone. Her silver eyes darted to the lights, sweeping closer. "You don't understand," she hissed urgently, fear thick in her words. "I am not just a soldier. I am the daughter of a ruler. If they find you with me, they will not only kill you, they will tear you apart piece by piece." He paused in the dark, staring down at her through the cracked visor. His silence cut deeper than any reply could. She saw it in his gaze. He didn't care who she was, didn't care what price her blood carried. His only answer was to hold her tighter and keep moving. The patrol voices grew clearer, alien words sharp and cold as they swept the ruins. Ethan ducked behind a broken column, crouching low, his heart steady despite the nearness of death. She pressed against him, every breath trembling, her eyes wide with terror. The patrol passed within arm's reach, their weapons glowing faintly in the night. One beam of light swept across the wall beside them, missing his visor by a single inch. Her nails dug into his armor, her lips close to his ear. "If they find us, I will beg them to spare you," I swear it. I will tell them you forced me, that you had no choice. The promise tasted of desperation, her voice raw. Ethan's grip did not loosen. He shifted slowly, waiting until the last echo of the patrol faded into the ruins. The silence afterward was suffocating. She buried her face into his chest, tears wetting the dust on his armor. For the first time since he had found her, she did not tell him to leave her behind. She did not demand freedom. Instead, she whispered a broken confession into the night. You're not supposed to be this way. Humans are weak, fragile, selfish, but you make no sense. Ethan adjusted the failing exoskeleton, tightening the cracked straps around his shoulders. His breathing was shallow, his lips pale, but his resolve was carved into every movement. He carried her once more into the dark, step after step, the sound of his boots marking a rhythm against the endless silence. Above them, searchlights continued to sweep the city. Behind them, patrols fanned out wider, and still ahead of them stretched 3 more days of impossible distance. She stared up at him as he carried her deeper into danger, her tears blurring the glow of sparks flying from his armor. For the first time, she wished he would answer her, because the silence of his resolve frightened her more than death itself. The third dawn bled into the ruins with pale light, and Ethan's body could no longer hide its breaking. His steps dragged, the exoskeleton shrieking with every motion, sparks showering the ground as if the machine itself begged for mercy. His arms trembled around her, veins bulging against skin, sweat dripping into his visor. When he stumbled, his knees slammed hard against the rubble, and for the first time since he had lifted her, she saw him falter. She pushed weakly at his chest, panic rising in her voice. "Stop! You can't go on! You'll die carrying me!" But his hands only locked tighter, muscles screaming as he forced himself back onto his feet. His breath was ragged, his jaw clenched so hard his teeth could have cracked, but his eyes still burned forward with the same fire. The exoskeleton finally gave out with a sharp crack. The right shoulder collapsed, metal gears snapping free, organic hydraulic fluid spraying across the ground. The machine convulsed and fell still, the weight of it dragging him half to the ground. She felt his arms slip for the first time. He sagged, gasping, her body sliding from his grip until she was against the rubble. She stared at him, horrified. His armor was cracked open, his undersuit soaked in blood from torn muscles and cuts that hadn't stopped bleeding. He tried to stand again, his legs shaking violently like his face twisted with pain. She grabbed his arm, desperate. "Leave me, please. This is the end. You can't save me if it kills you." Her voice broke into a sob, her words trembling with guilt and terror. He looked at her, his visor broken enough now that she could see his eyes clearly. They were bloodshot, burning with exhaustion, but behind them there was something unshakable. Defiance. He tore the last remains of the exoskeleton straps from his body and let the broken machine fall away with a crash. Without its strength, he bent low, scooped her into his bare arms, and lifted her once more. His back arched under the strain, his muscles screaming, but he refused to let her go. She shook her head, tears streaming down her silver cheeks. "You'll die, human! You'll die!" Her fists pounded weakly against his chest, but it only made him hold her tighter. He staggered forward, step after agonizing step, every motion a battle. Blood dripped from his arm, staining her torn uniform. His breath came in hoarse grunts, but his pace never broke. The ruins grew louder with distant shouts. Her people were drawing near, the sound of engines roaring, weapons humming. She twisted in his arms, desperate to make him stop. "They'll kill you for me. Why are you doing this? Why won't you let me die?" He stumbled, almost falling, but caught himself with one knee against the ground. He shifted her weight, forcing his body to rise again, his face pale and shaking. His silence screamed louder than words, his determination written in every broken step he took. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing, trembling not from her wounds, but from the truth pressing into her heart. Everything she had been taught about humans shattered in that moment. Weak, fragile, selfish. None of it fit this man who carried her, though his body tore itself apart. The sky rumbled with the engines of enemy ships. The ground shook with the approach of soldiers. Ethan's arms trembled violently, his body nearing collapse, but still he carried her. Still he refused to let her touch the ground. Each step echoed with defiance, each breath a refusal to surrender. She clung to him now, no longer fighting, no longer begging to be left. Instead, Her tears fell into his chest plate as she whispered brokenly, "You're going to die for me, and I can't bear it." His answer was the same as always, silence and another step forward into the impossible. The ruins shook with the thunder of engines, voices shouting in a language Ethan didn't understand but knew too well. Soldiers poured through the broken streets, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. Ethan's legs buckled beneath the weight in his arms, every muscle screaming in agony. His breath came ragged, each exhale carrying the sound of pain he refused to voice. Still, he carried her. She clutched his neck, eyes wide with horror as the soldiers surrounded them. Blue lights flared across the rubble, weapons aimed at his chest. She twisted in his arms, her voice breaking. "Stop! Put me down, please. If they see you carrying me, they'll kill you without hesitation." Ethan staggered to his knees, his body collapsing, yet even then he did not let her touch the ground. He shifted, shielding her with his own frame, his back hunched against the circle of soldiers. Blood seeped down his arm, dripping onto the stones beneath them. He could not lift his rifle. His arms were already consumed with holding her, but his eyes, half hidden beneath the shattered visor, burned like fire. The soldiers shouted, their weapons humming with energy, but then they froze. For the first time, they saw clearly who he held. Their princess, her silver skin bruised, her leg bound by crude human cloth, her body trembling not from fear of them, but from the sight of the man shielding her with his life. One soldier stepped forward, lowering his weapon in disbelief. "Princess?" The word cracked with shock. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting between them and the broken human still holding her. For a heartbeat, she said nothing, her mind torn in two directions. Then, with a trembling voice that carried through the silence, she declared, "He is under my protection. Any who harm him will answer to me." The soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons lowering just an inch. Ethan's head bowed, his strength gone, but his arms still locked around her as if even now someone might tear her away. She looked down at him, tears streaming freely down her face, her chest aching with a truth she could no longer hide. "You carried me," she whispered, her voice breaking so low only he could hear. 3 days through death and fire. I begged you to leave me, but you never let go. Why, human? Why?" His lips parted, but no sound came. His throat was dry, his strength spent. Yet in his silence she finally understood. He had chosen her, not for what she was, not for what it meant, but because he could not abandon anyone who needed him, even if it destroyed him. She cupped his blood-stained face with trembling hands, pressing her forehead against his. "Then I will not abandon you," she whispered fiercely. Her people watched in stunned silence as their princess clung to a dying human, shielding him now with her own body. Ethan's arms loosened at last, his strength gone, but before he slipped into darkness, he felt her grip tighten around him, her voice burning into his ears. "Maybe I never wanted you to leave me. Maybe I never will." The circle of soldiers stood frozen, their weapons lowered, the weight of her words changing everything. The man who should have been left to die had carried their future in his arms, and she had chosen him before them all.